Have you ever started a compost pile with the best of intentions, full of excitement for that rich, dark soil you're going to make? You toss in your coffee grounds, your eggshells, and all those leftover vegetable scraps from making dinner. You add some leaves from the yard and maybe a few grass clippings. Then you wait, and you wait, and you wait some more. It feels like that pile just sits there, looking more like a heap of last week's garbage than the beautiful black gold everyone talks about. It can be so discouraging, can't it? You start to wonder if you're doing something wrong, or if making good compost is just one of those things that takes forever and a day. It's a common story, and one I've heard time and time again. Out here on the ranch, we produce a lot of, well, let's call it organic matter, and letting it all just sit around for a year or more isn't really an option. When I first started getting serious about gardening, my own compost pile seemed to move at a snail's pace. I'd look at it, poke it with a stick, and wonder what magic I was missing. It seemed like my neighbors, the seasoned farmers who have been working this land for generations, had some kind of secret. All right, are you ready for the big secret? The trick that farmers use to make their compost break down twice as fast or even faster is something called hot composting. Now don't let the name intimidate you. It's not complicated, I promise. The whole idea is to build a compost pile that gets hot, really hot. We're talking about temperatures reaching 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit right in the center of the pile. This heat is the key. It creates the perfect environment for heat-loving bacteria, the superheroes of the decomposition world, to move in and get to work at an incredible pace. They are the engine that drives this whole process forward. Think of it like this. A regular, slow compost pile is like a slow cooker on the keep warm setting. It gets the job done eventually, but it takes its sweet time. A hot compost pile, on the other hand, is like a pressure cooker. It uses heat and a controlled environment to cook things up fast and efficiently. This heat doesn't come from an external source. You don't need to plug it in. It's generated naturally by the billions of microorganisms as they feast on the organic materials you've provided. The secret isn't an ingredient, it's a process of creating the perfect party for these microscopic helpers. So, how do farmers achieve this? The trick boils down to three simple things: the right ingredients, the right size, and the right amount of attention. They don't just toss things on the pile willy-nilly. They build it all at once, or in large batches, making sure it's at least 3 feet wide by 3 feet tall. This size is crucial because it provides enough insulation to trap the heat generated by the microbes. A small pile just can't hold on to that heat, and it will never get hot enough to really kick into high gear. Now that you know the secret is all about heat, let's talk about how to build a pile that gets things cooking. The first rule of hot composting is to gather your materials all at once. Instead of adding a little bit each day, save up your kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and leaves until you have enough to build a pile that's at least 3 feet wide, 3 feet long, and 3 feet high. A 4 by 4 foot pile is even better. This might seem like a lot, but you can use a couple of dedicated trash cans or a corner of your yard to stockpile your materials for a week or two until you're ready for the big build. Once you have your mountain of materials ready, it's time to assemble your pile like you're making a giant lasagna. You want to alternate layers of greens and browns. We'll get into what those are in a minute, but just picture it. A 6-inch layer of crunchy brown leaves, then a 3-inch layer of green grass clippings, then another layer of browns, then a layer of kitchen scraps. As you add each layer, give it a light sprinkle with the garden hose. You want the materials to be damp, like a wrung-out sponge, but not sopping wet. This moisture is essential for the microbes to move around and do their work. A great farmer's trick to kickstart the whole process is to add a starter to your new pile. This doesn't have to be anything fancy you buy at the store. The best starter is simply a few shovelfuls of finished compost from an old pile, or even just some good, rich garden soil. This acts as an inoculant, introducing a healthy population of those beneficial bacteria and fungi right from the get-go. It's like adding a bit of sourdough starter to a new batch of bread dough. It gives the whole thing a running start and helps the pile heat up much more quickly than it would on its own. Finally, as you build your layers, try to put coarser, bulkier materials like small twigs or chopped up corn stalks at the very bottom of the pile. This helps create air channels from below, which is super important for keeping the pile aerobic, meaning full of oxygen. Those little microbes need to breathe, just like we do. Without enough air, the pile can turn into a slimy, stinky, anaerobic mess. And that's not what we're going for. Building a good foundation with airflow in mind is a simple step that makes a huge difference in the success of your hot composting adventure. Okay, let's talk ingredients. The heart of any good compost pile, especially a hot one, is the right balance of brown materials and green materials. This is probably the most important part of the whole recipe. Browns are the dry, carbon-rich materials. Think of things like dried leaves from the fall, straw, sawdust from untreated wood, shredded newspaper, and cardboard. These materials are the fuel, the slow-burning energy source for your compost pile. They provide the bulk and structure, and they prevent the pile from becoming a soggy, compacted mess. They are absolutely essential for a healthy pile. On the other side of the recipe, we have the greens. These are the fresh, moist, nitrogen-rich materials. This category includes things like fresh grass clippings, kitchen scraps, like fruit and vegetable peels, coffee grounds and eggshells, and even manure from herbivores like chickens, cows, or horses. The greens are the activators. They provide the protein and nitrogen that the microorganisms need to multiply rapidly and generate all that wonderful heat we're looking for. A pile with too few greens will be slow and sluggish, while a pile with too many will get smelly and slimy really fast. The magic ratio that farmers swear by is about 2 to 3 parts browns to 1 part greens by volume. So, for every bucket of kitchen scraps and grass clippings you add, you should be adding 2 or 3 buckets of dried leaves or shredded cardboard. It can be tempting to just dump all your kitchen waste in, but you have to resist. Stockpiling those brown materials is key. I keep a big pile of dried leaves in a corner of the yard all year round just for this purpose. Getting this carbon to nitrogen ratio right is what makes the difference between a hot, active pile and a cold, lazy one. Now, just as important as what you put in is what you keep out. There are a few things that should never go into your home compost pile. Avoid adding any meat, fish, bones, or dairy products, as these can attract pests like raccoons and rats, and they can create some truly awful odors as they decompose. You should also steer clear of oily or greasy foods for the same reason. And definitely don't add any pet waste from dogs or cats, as it can contain harmful pathogens that won't be reliably killed off, even in a hot pile. Sticking to plant-based materials and herbivore manure is the safest and best bet. You've built your beautiful layered pile. It's got the right ingredients, the right moisture, and it's the right size. So can you just walk away and let it do its thing? Not quite. The next crucial step in the farmer's hot composting method is turning the pile. This might sound like a lot of work, but it's the single most important action you can take to speed up the process. Turning the pile mixes everything together, ensuring that all the material gets a chance to be in the hot core of the pile. It also reintroduces oxygen, which, as we know, is vital for those hard-working microbes. So, how do you know when to turn it? The best way is to use a compost thermometer. It's a long-stemmed thermometer you can find at most garden centers. A few days after you build your pile, start checking the temperature in the center. You'll see it climb quickly. Once it reaches its peak, somewhere around 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and then starts to cool down a bit, that's your signal. It's time to turn. For most hot piles, this happens every 4 to 7 days. The pile heats up, you turn it, and it will heat right back up again. The goal of turning is to move the cooler material from the outside edges of the pile into the hot center, and to move the partially decomposed material from the center to the outside. The easiest way to do this is with a pitchfork. If you have a 2-bin system, you can simply fork the entire pile from the first bin into the empty one next to it, making sure to break up any clumps and mix everything thoroughly. If you just have one big pile, you can work your way around it, pulling the outside material off, setting it aside, and then putting it back on top after you've fluffed up the core. As you turn the pile, pay attention to its moisture level. The material should still feel like a damp sponge. If it seems a bit dry, which can happen as the pile heats up, don't be afraid to add a little water with the hose as you're turning. This regular turning and attention is what separates the fast, hot method from the slow, cold one. Each time you turn it, you're giving it a fresh breath of air and redistributing the food for the microbes, which sparks another flurry of activity and another heat spike. It's a cycle of heating, turning, and reheating that rapidly transforms your raw materials into black gold. We've talked a lot about the ingredients and the heat, but let's take a moment to really appreciate the two unsung heroes of the composting world: water and air. You can have the perfect ratio of browns and greens, but without the right amount of moisture and oxygen, your pile will grind to a halt. Farmers know that managing these two elements is just as important as choosing the right materials. They are constantly monitoring and adjusting to keep that microbial party going strong. It's a delicate dance, but it's one that's easy to learn. Let's start with water. The microorganisms that break down organic matter need a moist environment to live, eat, and reproduce. A dry pile is a dead pile. The ideal moisture level for a compost pile is about 40 to 60%. But you don't need a fancy meter to figure that out. Just use the good old-fashioned squeeze test. Grab a handful of the compost material and squeeze it firmly in your fist. If a few drops of water come out, it's just right. If water streams out, it's too wet. If nothing comes out and the material feels dry and crumbly, it's too dry. If your pile is too dry, the solution is simple. Add water. The best time to do this is when you are building or turning the pile. Use a hose with a spray nozzle to lightly water each layer as you build, or to moisten the materials as you turn them from one spot to another. If your pile is too wet, the opposite problem occurs. The water fills up all the air pockets, and the pile becomes anaerobic. To fix a soggy pile, you need to add more dry, brown materials like shredded leaves or cardboard. Turning the pile will also help it dry out by exposing more of the material to the air. And that brings us to our second hero, air. The heat-loving bacteria we want to encourage are aerobic, meaning they require oxygen to survive. Without enough air, different kinds of microbes, anaerobic ones, take over. These are the culprits behind stinky, slimy compost piles that smell like ammonia or rotten eggs. To ensure good airflow, farmers build their piles with bulky materials at the bottom and turn them regularly. Some even insert perforated PVC pipes into the center of the pile to help funnel air into the core. Keeping the pile fluffy and not compacted is the key to a sweet-smelling, efficient compost system. So what happens after all this building, turning, and temperature taking? The result is nothing short of miraculous. Within just 4 to 8 weeks, that big pile of kitchen scraps, leaves, and grass clippings transforms into something completely different. It becomes dark, rich, crumbly, and sweet-smelling, with an earthy aroma like a forest floor after a spring rain. This finished product is what gardeners lovingly call black gold, and for good reason. It's one of the most valuable resources you can create for your garden, and you've made it yourself for free. The real-life results that farmers see from using this hot composting method are astounding. They get a consistent, high-quality soil amendment in a fraction of the time it would normally take. This allows them to enrich their fields more frequently, leading to healthier soil structure, better water retention, and a huge reduction in the need for chemical fertilizers. Healthier soil means healthier plants, which are naturally more resistant to pests and diseases. This creates a beautiful, sustainable cycle where waste from the farm is quickly recycled back into the land to grow even more nutritious food. It's efficiency at its finest. For you at home, the benefits are just as fantastic. Mixing this homemade compost into your garden beds will make your soil come alive. It improves the texture of both heavy clay soils and sandy soils, helping them hold the perfect amount of water. Your vegetables will be more vibrant and flavorful, your flowers will produce bigger and brighter blooms, and your whole garden will be more resilient during dry spells. You'll be feeding your soil, which in turn will feed your plants. It's the most natural and effective way to ensure a bountiful harvest year after year. I really hope you'll give this hot composting method a try. Don't be afraid to jump in and get your hands dirty. Start saving up your browns and greens this week. Your simple call to action is this. Find a spot in your yard, aim for that 3 by 3 foot size, and build your first hot pile. Grab a pitchfork and a thermometer and watch the magic happen. There is something so incredibly satisfying about creating your own black gold. It connects you to the earth and to the food you grow, and it's a wonderful project for the whole family. Happy composting!